Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's video. Of course, tonight is the start of Chelsea's Premier League season away to Brighton. I'm going to be giving my rational perspective to that game following the full-time whistle. Let's hope it's a good start to the season, but let's get into your questions. Firstly here from TY7 asking, should Mendy start against Liverpool if he's available? Liverpool crosses and set pieces are dangerous. I don't think Kepa can handle those. Mendy would easily catch their crosses. A lot of that I think depends on him signing for Chelsea officially and getting integrated at Cobham, to be honest, because we've seen with the likes of Thiago Silva and other players as well, it can take a little bit of time for players to get ready to actually play a game. I mean, it's not always the same. I mean, some players can instantly go into the first team. I think it's such a problem position for Chelsea. Hopefully tonight we see a good display from whoever is in goal, whether it's Caballero or Kepa. I don't expect that to happen, to be honest. Even if he does sign, say, today or tomorrow, I just can't see that happening. It'd be a really fast turnaround, to be honest. I think just based on training, selection, knowing the player, him getting used to being a Chelsea player, I think it'd be a real quick turnaround. Maybe he impresses in a very short span of time, but as I say, he has to sign very, very soon for that to become a possibility. But I do think when he does arrive, I think in the long term, he will be probably the most used keeper this season, in my opinion. Flea White asks, do you think Chelsea will go in for another goalkeeper, maybe like Donnarumma in January if he is available, even after the Mendy signing? I don't, to be honest, because I think that with Petr Cech being so influential in the transfer of Mendy and saying this is the goalkeeper we need this summer, I think even if Mendy is a short-term option, I think Chelsea may revisit the goalkeeper situation next summer if they feel they need to improve again and say a Jan Oblak becomes available and that becomes the primary target for Chelsea. If Chelsea feel they still need to strengthen a goalkeeper position, let's hope that Mendy could be the answer for Chelsea and will improve this season. So a lot can change in a short amount of time, we know, with football, so we'll have to wait and see. But I don't see, especially Donnarumma, I can't see that happening in January, in my opinion. Green3101 asks, with Ziyech out for a few games, do you think we could see Havertz used as a right winger initially? Potentially, we could see that tonight. I personally don't predict that. I think you'll likely see Kai Havertz maybe as a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1 or a number 8 in a formation. But I think just generally, rather than just looking at starting positions for players, I think you'll see a lot of fluid movement this season between attacking players. That's what Frank Lampard has now with his new signings, along with the current attacking players he had last season, and I think that's really exciting. So even if Ziyech in one game starts on the right and Havertz starts as, say, a number 10 or a number 8, you could see those two interchange within games, because we do know Ziyech has the ability to go more central. So that's what's exciting for me. So even if, say, generally you don't see Kai Havertz start in that area, I think he could naturally drift into that area, and I think the same with a player like Timo Werner as well. Tyrone asks, is it a risk to change half the starting 11 suddenly? Will it backfire for us? Potentially it could, and that's a challenge for Frank Lampard, and it's something I think that Chelsea fans should be aware of at the start of the season if things don't initially click amazingly well. Because you are bringing in a lot of players, and those players, not only, a lot of people I think see transfers as almost like FIFA. In FIFA career mode, you just buy a player, you bring them into your starting 11 and they click instantly because they're really good players. Sometimes that's the case with transfers. Sometimes a player has to settle to a new league, the pace of a new league, adjusting to it, the physicality of a league. And I'm sure with all these signings, because there's so many of them, not all of them are going to do amazingly well. That's just natural. But I think that just given that time, and it's a challenge of Lampard, I don't think it's a bad problem to have. And maybe you'll see one or two players faded in a little bit slowly, like Christian Pulisic was last season. So not all of them may instantly be in the starting 11. Some of them may slowly integrate themselves into the position, because I think that Frank Lampard has a big squad to choose from, and that could help in that area, just allowing a player who's maybe having difficulty to settle to the Premier League a little bit longer to settle before getting them into the first team more regularly. So it is a difficulty, and I hope Chelsea fans give that patience. There is a higher level of expectation this year because of the quality of players bringing in, so there needs to be better football overall, but I still do think there is that concern, and it's a challenge for Frank Lampard to take on, and he has to prove that he can integrate all these players into his first team this season. Curly Short asks, was it a mistake to let Ethan Ampadu go on loan if we don't get Declan Rice this window? Ampadu is the only other natural CDM in the squad, and Gilmour is out for a couple of months. I don't think it's a mistake to let Ethan Ampadu go. I discussed this last week on the channel. I just think based on the lack of games he had last year, I think Chelsea are very, and I saw some Ampadu quotes about this and speaking with Frank Lampard and sort of making the best decision for his career this season. He needs regular game time for his development this year. He can't have another year like at Leipzig. And there was a risk if we kept him and Kante stays fit and, even, going out and maybe signing Declan Rice as well, what game time is Ifan Ampadu going to get? Especially if, say, Kovacic has another good season, all the midfielders within that area, it's so stacked. So I think that it's not a mistake to let him go. In the case of Declan Rice, it seems to be a case where Chelsea are really going to try and get this deal done this window, which is a surprise to me. How willing will West Ham be to go into negotiations for Declan Rice? How high will the fee be? Will Chelsea be able to go in for that? And also selling players, I think, is a key thing now for getting Declan Rice on board, because I think if Chelsea cannot shift some of the deadwood within the squad, I think it's going to be very difficult to get Declan Rice in. I don't think it'd be a massive mistake personally for me if we don't get Declan Rice this window, because it has been an incredible window, really. And I don't think anyone should really scoff at the fact that if we don't get Declan Rice, I think that's an inevitable move. And as one of the questions earlier in this video said to me, in terms of a January move, I potentially think Declan Rice could be a January move for Chelsea, considering West Ham's form. It's just one of those moves. You've seen this before with like Virgil van Dijk going from Southampton to Liverpool, Bruno Fernandes, Ross Barkley. I think I've said this on the channel before, but I think that sometimes you see moves that maybe don't go through in the summer but are inevitable, and eventually those deals get done because the club who has that player knows that maybe he feels unsettled. It's a time to get the money in for the player, and Chelsea may feel we'll wait a little bit, we'll eventually get Declan Rice in the future. But no, I think the concern is, of course, natural CDM, and it's about balance. And you can see why Frank Lampard wants Declan Rice. You could see potentially a midfield three of Declan Rice sitting at the base of it, maybe N'Golo Kante a little bit further forward, or a Mateo Kovacic type player, and in a number 8, whether that's a bombing number 8 in Mason Mount or Kai Havertz, just to add that perfect balance, because we have not had it in recent seasons. VEYDEEP asked, should Pulisic play in a much more central role with Werner pushing left? I always felt Pulisic could give much more from a central role. Werner in the squad can facilitate that as well. I do agree with this, and it references an earlier question I answered about Havertz and Ziyech, and I feel very similar about Werner and Pulisic, because Pulisic is very dangerous when he does drift in. Even when he starts on the left, I think you will naturally see him in game drift from left into central areas to connect with, say, the right winger at the time last season. That was Willian a lot of the time, or connect with the striker or midfield. I think that you see that with Pulisic, but Pulisic has such dynamic movement, and he has the ability to drift centrally to connect with play, but also go outside as well and take on the fullback and do that pretty successfully. I think Pulisic has that ability. Once again, it's the same answer I'm going to give. I think that even if Timo Werner is playing centrally and you see Christian Pulisic playing out left, which we could see tonight against Brighton, I think in the same way you could see those two switch positions. I think the thing for me is when Werner does drift out wide, there has to be someone in the middle for me, because that's a problem. I saw it a little bit in the preseason friendly against Brighton, where Werner would naturally drift wide, and because I think it was Callum Hudson-ODOI and Ziyech were the wingers at the time, we need someone running in there to fill that space and to create chances. If Werner's delivering from out wide, someone needs the goal scoring instinct, which I think Christian Pulisic has. I do agree with you. So once again, rotation, and I think that's why I believe that Christian Pulisic can score a lot of goals this season, because he has got that instinct for goals and to get more central, which I think he can be really dangerous at. Enoch asks, where do you think Caballero stands after the signing of Mendy? Interesting question. I think he will likely still stay this season. He signed that contract extension a few months back to sort of settle in for the season. I think he's a good professional to have. I think he'll be happy with the fact he could even start tonight's game, still get game time throughout the season. I think a lot depends on Kepa's form. Of course, if Kepa's form increases and gets better and he regains some confidence, it's going to be very difficult for Caballero along with Mendy to get game time. But I think he's a decent professional. He's coming to the end of his career. He could do a similar thing to, say, Hilario did at the end of his career, move on to coaching, for instance. So I don't think Caballero at this point in his career will be too disappointed sitting on the bench, because he's been doing it a lot, and to be honest, last season got more game time than he expected. So I don't think it's that drastic of a situation, and I think 3 goalkeepers is decent. Having 2 main goalkeepers is decent as well. So I think it's a good situation to have, and I think Caballero will likely remain for the whole season, in my opinion. Brendan Coyle asked, do you think Lampard, if the team doesn't gel till around Christmas, will there be a chance of him getting sacked? No, I don't think there will be. Something drastically bad has to happen. It has to be a 15-16 situation where we're like 10th, or even, of course, below that, like 17th, 18th. I just cannot see that happening, to be honest. I think, as I said earlier in the video, it's a very congested season this year, and you have to understand the amount of players we brought in and the fact they all have to gel. But I think when you look at last season, what Lampard achieved with a squad with a lot of young players, his inexperience and naivety as a coach, and the fact he didn't bring in any of his own players that he wanted to improve the squad, I think you have to be impressed by that and trust Lampard's vision. Generally, and I think this is a point I've seen a lot made in terms of predictions for the season, Lampard being under a lot of pressure. For me, just my personal opinion as a fan, whether it's, realistic to what the board actually want, I want to see a manager get given time at Chelsea. I'm so sick to death of the 1 to 2 year cycles. As I say, if something drastically bad happens, then maybe we reassess that. But if it's, if it takes a little bit longer for this team to gel, from what we're hearing from the likes of Simon Johnson, Frank Lampard and Chelsea want to see this as a 3-year vision. Frank Lampard knows the pressure of being Chelsea's head coach. He knows the pressure of Chelsea just generally, and I think he'll do a good job this season. I think he's got the capability to do it based on what I saw last season. Defensively is the big issue, isn't it? But I think that just saying, say for instance, if we're like 2nd or 3rd at Christmas time, right, and we've seen some good things from certain players, some decent results, but there have been some negatives within there. I mean, what are you going to say? If we're 2nd or 3rd, are you going to sack him with the potential maybe to be in a title race in the second half of the season? I can't see that, to be honest. Something really bad has to happen, and just even if things aren't perfect by Christmas, but we're still 3rd or 2nd or 4th maybe, I don't think you should be sacking him. I just think it'd be a really reactive, silly decision that would set Chelsea back a long way, in my opinion. So that is it for this episode of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.